All right. So I read somewhere that the first ideas that ended up on Escapades were already with you for almost a decade. So when did this idea of bringing out of a body of music by yourself become a reality?
Yeah, because I guess probably the oldest idea of a track I had is probably like 10 years old or something. But because I always like record some beats and pieces and melodic ideas and stuff like this. But almost, in some kind of half sleep state, where you just wake up and you have something in your head and you try to make sense out of it. Uh, but I guess since we started with Justice, we always had the same pattern of spending 1 year and a half in the studio recording an album, then preparing the live shows for 6 months, and then touring for 1 year and a half. So I guess that's a long time span to be stuck with the same music. And I mean it's fun and everything, but I guess it just felt right to break that pattern and release something on my own. Yeah.
Once you made that decision, and like you said, you obviously have released quite some music with Justice, and then that then becomes, I suppose, to some extent, your musical identity for a while. So when you were back to just being you, what did you notice about where your interests were, where your inspirations came from?
But mostly to get away from like the diktats of genre of either like club music or pop music, like just to make something a bit more open and a bit like a bit more free form, than what's going on in the musical world. And obviously, like I mean, a lot of amazing music is made as we speak, but just to get out a bit of every chapel, and to give something to people that has a bit more I mean that can be a bit more stimulating, like for imagination, and this is why I choose to do an instrumental records, just for people to put their own like backstory or like musical background, like because obviously someone will listen to a track and it will ring a bell and make him think of this or that, and it's different for everybody, and same on an emotional level, like you like whether you listen to it when you, I don't know, like cruising in a car or in your bedroom or whatever, or at work, or and just to avoid to have a lyrical narrative, and also to not have a language. It was just the best way for me to achieve that, and to give something that is because obviously listening to music is a very subjective experience, and when you add lyrics to this, then it kind of dictates a bit the way you have to listen to it, and then you have the look of the singer in your head, and I found it a bit restrictive, and I just wanted this record to be as universal as possible.
And one thing that I found interesting that I read about you talking about this record, you mentioned that back in the 70s, 60s, or 70s, 80s, the music was less cynical in a way. And I suppose you explained it by saying kind of when something was happy or upbeat, it was genuinely happy and upbeat, when the kind of the emotions were very pure in a way. So can you explain that a little bit, and kind of what you were looking for in the kind of the emotions?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I like about those these decades is that you could feel that they were like very like hopeful time, at least from today's perspective, and just with like this kind of utopic feel, you know, like. About and what space age like meant to people was probably like some kind of promise of a better world somewhere, you know, elsewhere. And this is why I've always been fascinated with sci-fi imagery and also music from this era, because it was also the beginnings of electronic music, where you had like all these otherworldly sounds and I guess there was something very innocent and utopic, and I guess this is something I really like.
Who were for you as you were growing up? Who were the people? I mean, maybe it was movies or anything, but what was the thing that helped you escape, so to say, to another place?
I guess probably like books or records, but and obviously like I didn't grow up like listening to library music and obscure soundtracks. You know, I was like a grunge kid, like everybody in the 90s, and but I never really paid attention to the lyrical content because it was in English and I was barely speaking English. So I guess it was, and when you're a teenager, like you're more into like aggressive music and you're in this state of rebellion about everything. And then when you grow older, like you just get into other types of music. But what I like about library music and soundtracks is that somehow it's functional music that is created to be as emotional as possible. And I guess this is why I've never been to minimal techno or like abstract music or music that was too experimental. I always need some kind of melodic content to be touched. And I guess this is where you really find this kind of music, like this kind of emotion in library music and soundtracks.
And this kind of has a cinematic quality linked to it. So has music always for you been kind of both of those things? So not just sonically, but also kind of having visual images in your mind?
I guess it's not especially me, but it's the same for everybody. You know,
Sure.
like when you listen to music, like you let your mind wander, and then and somehow I find it less passive than watching a movie. You know, because watching a movie, like everything is given, and find most movies. And then you have this kind of like when it's badly done and when it's too obvious. I always feel like I'm a bit like emotionally raped by the director. You know, that wants you to feel sad at this moment, so he will put a very sad music or very epic music if he wants you to feel excited. And so I guess like most my favorite movies, they barely have any music in them. And just because you can put more into even watching a movie, like when you're not forced or told by someone, okay, now you should feel sad, and also this is why I never really liked movies that were self-explanatory, you know, all the time, like just when everything is too obvious and there's no room for for making your own conclusions, you know. Like, and I guess this is why I really love the movies of Fellini and Jodorowsky, because there is not like one way to understand the movie. You know, it's very open, and it's and I guess this is mostly because the Fellini and Jodorowsky were working a lot with their dreams material. You know, like just to have this kind of stream of subconsciousness into their work, and I guess it's very stimulating. Yeah.
Was this then the approach you took in kind of making the record, that it a very open approach, that it could go in any direction that you felt like? Because more than well, you mentioned previous work, you took about a year and a half to work on it. This was, I believe, done in 2 months.
It was a bit more than that, but okay. the recording period was very short because we were in Motorbase studio, so we had a limited amount of time there. And but I guess that was a good way of working, because we never got tired of the tracks, and it was always very fresh, and it was easier to make radical decisions. But it's just a different approach, like, because when we work with Justice, we can always it's never really finished, because we have all the time in the world, you know, unless until we say okay, it's finished, or until we have a deadline. But this time around, like, just the process of being in a studio and knowing, okay, we have to do 3 tracks in 3 days, it was a bit different. Yeah.
What was the song for you that came together the quickest or the easiest?
But I guess it's probably Europa, because most of it was already written. And so it's probably the first one we worked on as well.
Okay.
And I guess it's probably the track that defines the most, like the record in the sense that it's very very linked to everything I've listened to when I was growing up, and this kind of derivation from classical music and soundtracks and all those weird feelings you can experience when you're a child, and that you don't really analyze music, you know, like you just you just get touched by it, or you don't, but you're never okay, I really like this synthesizer sound or this hi-hat compression, you know, like it's more naive, and this is what I like. Mm-hmm.
And well, like you said, everybody has their own kind of links to certain sounds, and it reminds you of certain things. But for me, Europa it kind of made me think of John Carpenter and his type of music, because there was this somewhat sinister tone here and there. So what was your approach particularly with that song?
But yeah, just to make something that I don't really know where it came from. I mean, and it's funny that you say John Carpenter, because it's not someone I had in mind when I was doing the track. But obviously, there is some similarities in the mood and in this kind of melancholic, gloomy feel. And I guess that was also one of the challenges, like to make instrumental tracks, but with that kept being surprising and creating like accidents and mood changes throughout the tracks. And I guess it's a good example of this process. Yeah.
What for you? Because I'm always interested in how instrumental music gets their title. So for instance, if we take this one, Europa, when did that track get that name?
I always liked very simple, like one word titles, and for the same reason that it's always like important for me to keep that subjectivity for the listener, and it's just some kind of keyword to orientate like the perception. But it's still very open. It's not like it's not called like a very sad moment in the rain or something. Like it's
sure.
a bit more open than this. And I just choose words that I thought fit the mood of the track and the way they sounded. I just choose them for the way they sounded and what they could evoke for people. Yeah.
We talked kind of about the fact that some of the ideas are quite old or have been with you for a while. What was the most recent idea that ended up on the album?
It's probably the song called Pentacle. Which started like a bit like a very like slow-paced track with this kind of answers and questions thing, and then I just had this kind of melodic idea, and after 30 seconds, or 1 minute, I don't remember, but it goes into something completely different. And also this is also like the magic of working with computers is that it's something it would have been impossible to think about without a computer, and we used a lot of like traditional instruments, pianos, drums, harpsichords, whatever. But also in the process of editing the tracks and making accidents, it was really useful, like for example, like just the loop principle, or just we found like some very happy accidents, like just by working on a very short bit of the song to adjust something. It reveals like sometimes some harmonics, that you don't hear in the in the whole song. And then you just loop it and it becomes something completely different. And it's a good old trick that we used a lot on the record.
How much of kind of what you now mentioned did most of that come together when you were in the studio? Kind of were the demos that you had very open still?
I mean, yes. Some of the demos were more finished than others, but like for some for some of them it was very, very rough demos with just melodic ideas, and it definitely come to life in the studio. Because like also like when you're working on a computer on your own at home, like it's not really it's a very rigid process, like it's not very sensitive, like you're basically like like pushing squares and tweaking like virtual buttons, and I guess the fact to be able to have like outboard and gear and synthesizers and instruments, like the interface is very important for the way you're gonna write the track as well.
Sure. And now you mentioned Studios, which is, I believe, owned by Philip Zdar, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a lot of equipment by the band Yes that was housed there.
No, I actually like because we worked mostly at Motorbase, but we worked in another studio in Paris. And it's funny because like at Motorbase, like you have like the most expensive equipment, like you have like those huge CS80 synthesizer that cost a lot of money. And then we went to this other studio that just had like different equipment, and they had this very cheap synthesizer. It's called the Korg DW8000. And it's like, I don't know, like 400 euros. And and he had amazing presets. And the guy from the studio like told us that it was bought to one of the Yes keyboard players. So maybe we used like some Yes presets without knowing it.
Because well, you mentioned these two kind of different settings then, because do the instruments that you have available, does that make a big impact on what kind of sounds come out? I suppose it would.
But I mean, yeah, but it really, I mean, it doesn't really rely on how expensive they are or rare they are. It's more about like for example, like making a beat on a real drum machine, like gives you another way of making a beat and how it reacts and how the interface is done makes you make completely different things. And it's a bit the same with keyboards. Like you're not gonna write the same song with a piano sound or with some kind of like 80s brass sound, you know, like it just I guess yes, unconsciously it makes you think of other tracks with a similar sound, and then it drives your way of writing.
Now with the world beginning to open up again, and I'm sure you're getting more busy and things with Justice might be becoming more prominent in your life again. Do you have any plans of touring this by yourself?
I'm still trying to figure out like what could be the live version of this record. But yeah, I'm still thinking about it because I guess it would be a bit weird to do it with like a classic, like a 5-piece band, or I don't know. So maybe I don't know if it's gonna be doable, but maybe something with choirs and orchestras or something like that.
All right. Final question then. Have you started writing, or do you have some ideas of what you want to do with Justice now? And then has this kind of process of Escapades, has that kind of given you new energy for Justice?
Yeah, no, we are like in the middle of the process of making a new record, and I guess now probably like it really opened like a field of possibilities of just maybe getting a bit out of our comfort zone and maybe collaborate more with like proper musicians and stuff, and just to be open to let people in, you know, the Justice enterprise, like and be maybe less autarcic.
Well, sounds good. We'll see what you come up with. Gaspard, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks a lot.